All three were wearing what appeared to be explosive vests.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Peace and blessings to each and every single body.
Even though black people know that we've been programmed, and that we've been programmed to self-hate each other, and we've been programmed in a way that it makes us, like you were saying earlier about how the black people arguing in a team, we were programmed to almost clash with each other every time we come together, instead of coming together to do positivity and coming together to build something. We all know this, but why is it that we still haven't managed to step over this bridge and build something?
Building requires energy. And energy is something that you need to focus on in order to build something constructive with. If you have an energy, it gives you a potential. If you don't have the direction, then what happens with the energy is anything can happen. Now in life, we know, or you should know from your own life, that it's easier to do nothing, or it's easier to do something wrong than what it is to do something right and something constructive. Or at least in our perception of the reality, it's easier. We think it's easier to tell a lie. Lies can just slip off the tongue. We think it's easier to tell a twist, to tell a crook, because it just slips off the tongue. It's like water off a duck's back. And yet our perception shows us that it's easier to do the wrong, or to do the lie, or to destroy something rather than to build something. The truth is, it's far easier in reality to tell the truth and to do the right thing and to build yourself, to build your community, to build your family, to build your nation, than what it is to destroy. And yet we choose to think that it's easier for us to destroy. Let me try and make you understand what I'm aiming at. Or does what I'm saying make sense?
It makes sense, sort of.
Okay, let me try and build it a little bit for you so you don't know already. The reality is, family, that I can say that it's the other man, that it's the outsider, that's to blame for our problems. And a lot of us try and say, well, it's because of 500 years of blood, sweat and tears, it's because of slavery, it's because of colonialism, it's because of indoctrination, it's because of false education, it's because of X, Y and Z. But the fault with our situation lies purely within ourselves, each and every single individual. So when I say something, I say, look, whatever applies to the universal has to apply to the personal. And whatever applies to the personal has to apply to the universal. So my own individual traits, my own individual failings and errors are the same failings of my people or my race or my nation or the human species as a whole. So taking that a topic further, taking that a step further. Yes, we know that Africans have been programmed to be subservient. We know that blacks, African Americans, South American Africans have been programmed to be subservient. We know that in a country like, for example, Brazil, where it's 95% black, blue-black skin, 5% of the light skin and the white skin rule the whole of the economy, rule the whole of the educational system, rule the whole of the financial system, rule the whole of the legal system. They run everything because we put ourselves in a situation of subservience. We leave ourselves in that situation of subservience rather than do the hard thing, rather than do the grafting, rather than do the thing which is necessary of us to grab a hold and shake a loose of this particularly wicked system that we're faced in. It's a system of, you can call it even self-hate. But who made hate? The hate that hate made was made from what? Hate is the opposite energy of what?
Of love.
Hate is the opposite energy of love. So we're talking about energies here. So if you can hate yourself, you take that same energy, give it a little twist, or give it a little daylight, and you can love yourself. But we really hate ourselves, and I don't even like to say the word hate, because we are basically water people, we're water bodies. And our bodies and our structures are made from water. And whatever sound, whatever word you pronounce, it has a profound effect on water. If you go into the YouTube, onto the Google, type in structurized water and have a look at the effects of the Japanese professors on structurized water. I can't remember his name, Professor Yakamoto or something like that. forgive me, it's no disrespect, I can't remember his name off the tip of my tongue, but structurized water, Tokyo, Japan experiments in the last decade shown us that if you say good words and use good energy and play decent so-called classical music around water, it leaves water with a beautiful snowflake type crystalline structure. And if you play some heavy metal, crash metal, trash metal, rubbish, crackerjack, mad music, then it leaves the crystalline nature of the water as some warped, demonic looking thing. So the energy is a powerful thing, blood. So in terms of why we're not doing more with our own situation, it's if you don't think that you're worthy of the effort, if you don't think that your partner is worthy of the effort, if you don't think that your brother, your mother, your father, your lover, your sister, your friend, your brethren, your cousin, your uncle, your auntie, if you don't think that they're worthy of your energy, then you're not going to give them your energy. And what tends to happen is, because of the subliminal programming of the educational and the societal structure that we're living in, because of the subliminal, it's not the things so much what you see on the outside, or the overt racism or the overt programming. The overt programming is, for example, you'll see 15 Hollywood blockbuster films come out, and only one of those films will have any decent constructive black character. So that's the overt side of it. The subjective or the subliminal programming comes in terms of the particular roles that the black people play generally in the films, or the particular themes that go along in the films. What I've tended to find in the last few months is that when you see interracial relationships, of which I am a byproduct and of which many people are byproducts of, when you see interracial relationships on the TV, on the film, on the cinema, on the advertisements, in video, in rap videos, you tend to see interracial relationships where it's a light-skinned man with a dark-skinned sister, where it's a white man with a light-skinned sister. And in the last 10, 15, 20 films I've seen, it's 90% white men with black or brown or light-skinned women, which is providing a subliminal, a subconscious justification for the white male to play the breadwinner and the head of the family for those women that come from African-centered families or African background families. And it subliminally, psychologically, deprograms the black man from being the breadwinner. Just take, for example, how this girl, Princess Margaret, what's her name? This mixed race girl is
Megan something.
Megan Sparkle or whatever. I don't give a
Markle.
I don't give a rock or George what her name is. Just take, for example, how the image of her and this demonic prince, devil worshipping, satanistic, Hitlerite youth, Prince Harry, Dirty Ross Prince Harry, who's a Hitler youth, who's seen doing swastika, who's seen doing Heil Hitler, taught from his mother, who was at the age of 5 doing swastika and doing Heil Hitler, at the age of 6 with her mother, whose father was SS, and the queen whose husband was taught in the SS, whose uncle, whose brother-in-law was the head of the SS, the swastika nasty Nazis. Just, yeah, it might seem like I'm going off on one, because, it's profound energy. You'll see that these nasty Nazis are part and parcel of the whole of the so-called royal family. They're part of the establishment. They are the establishment. So just like this nasty Nazi is marrying this light-skinned mixed parentage or mixed heritage female, just like generally in society you'll find more images which make it acceptable subliminally for the white man to be going with light skin or females of colour. But very rarely will you ever see a black male with a white female. Now, I'm not one of these extremists from either side that say black and white should not be together because it produces mongrel, because it produces mixed breed, because it produces half caste, because it produces madness, it produces bastardization of any original, because human being is original, and what we all strive to be is original humans. We've lost our human efficacy, we've lost our human energy, we've lost our humane potential by chasing ideological or racial goals to the nth degree. But getting back to the fact of the matter, and it's related, and it's that if you don't think that yourself is worth the extra effort, or your family or your community is worth the extra effort, to go the extra yard, to take that pain without complaining, to take that insult, to take that slight, knowing that that slight or that insult comes from ignorance, if you're not prepared to do that, or to be that, like a parent, when you're a parent, you have to take some slights from your children. You have to let them win at a game in order to make them feel good within themselves. You understand me? And that's what you do as a parent. That's what you do as a man. That's what you do as an adult. That's what you do as a civilized race and nation. You allow some of those insults. You allow some of those deficiencies to come true so that it gives the individuals confidence and optimism. So, getting back to the heart of the matter of the question, which was, why are we still in this situation? It's down to lack of self-understanding, because we know that knowledge of self is the ultimate power. And when you know who you are, it's not about, I'm a black man, or I'm a white man, or I'm a brown man, or I'm a Mexican, or whatever. It's not about knowing your physical identity, because your physical self could be anybody. Because essentially, as humans, we are all the same. And that's something which is quite difficult for those of us caught up in the racial polemic to grab a hold of, to understand. We can't sympathize with a white guy. We can't sympathize with an Asian guy. We can't sympathize with a black guy. We can't sympathize with a Chinese guy or an Oriental, because they don't look like us, they're not us. But in reality, all of our situations are the same. We all feel joy. We all feel pain. We all feel hate. We all feel love. We all feel joy. You understand me? We all go through the great variety of emotions. So why is it that we don't want to? We can say, well, it's down to programming. Or we can say it's down to lack of self-esteem. Or we can say it's down to lack of whatever. You can make a million reasons. You'll get some African-American pathological maniac, professor with a PhD who says that, yes, it's because of this or it's because of that. You can make up any reason you like, but essentially, if you're not doing what you need to do in order to survive as a family, as a community, as a people, as a race, as a nation, as a human species, let's just take humanity as a general. The whole of humanity right now, beloved, is insane. The whole of the human race is crazy in the brain. The whole of the human race has lost it. They flipped the lid. They flipped the script. They've lost the plot. The whole of humanity. You can say, no, I know loads of people which are sensible. No, we're part of a consciousness raising group, and we're African, we're Kemetic, we're Pharaonic, we're whatever, we're Moronic, we're Masonic. You can be whatever you want to be, call yourself whatever label you want. But the way that the human race is going, the human species is heading for self-destruction. And we're part of that species. So those people in Africa, those people in Southern America, who have got leaders that take part in the whole world system of capitalism or white supremacy or laissez-faire or whatever you want to call it, they're part and parcel of the problem as well. Let's take, for example, South Africa and Zimbabwe, which are intricately linked. Zimbabwe, up until recently, was the only country on the face of the planet Earth that the people that were born on the land owned the natural resources whereupon they were born. So the natural resources of Zimbabwe belong to the people of Zimbabwe, belong to the government of Zimbabwe, belong to the companies of Zimbabwe, because of Robert Mugabe. And don't forget Robert Mugabe. Some people, they call him a Hitlerite, they call him a black Mussolini, a black Hitler, they call him everything. But 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you can see him with photographs with the Queen, see him with photographs with Maggie Thatcher, with Tony Blair. They gave him an OBE, they made him a knight, they took away his knighthood, they took away his OBE, so he's no longer a member of the British Empire. Good for him, good for Africa, because he made sure that the African resources, the natural earth resources, the mineral resources, the gold, the diamonds, the plutonium, everything was owned by his owner people. And because he was so dog-hearted, because he carried on with a Pan-Africanist principle, which he has every right to do, but because he did that, the Europeans, the Americans, and the so-called world powers put embargoes on him. They put sanctions on him. Put label, and the Western media labelled him as a maniac, labelled him as a black devil, labelled him as a baby blood-sucking demon, which is in fact what they are. It's again the negative self-reversal, the negative self-projection. But they called Mugabe X, Y, and Z, and they weren't happy until he's to be dead. Last year I was singing the praises of Mugabe, saying may he live for another 10, 15 years, because we need an African leader who's going to show Africans, blacks, that they can rule for themselves, that they don't need outside powers to come in and look after their resources for them. When you have the European companies or the so-called multinational companies coming into your country, taking the resources, gaining all the profits, yeah, there might be a trickle-down effect, but it's a very slow and long forbearing effect. It doesn't come quick enough. The effect of the riches doesn't come to the masses of the people quick enough. You with me, blood? Mm-hmm. So that's Zimbabwe. So what the Western government did, I'll say this even though you don't hear it in the mainstream daydream, bombarras, deadstream media, even though you won't hear it in the media, I'll tell you what the Western governments have been doing and what they're complicit in is the overthrow of Mugabe. Because Zimbabwe doesn't make weapons. In order to have a military coup or a takeover of a government, you need weapons. Where did the weapons come from? Did it come from Mugabe's tribal Mau Mau from back in the day? No. Did it come from the neighbors Kenya? No. Did it come from any African president? No. It came from European corporations. It came from European governments who work clandestinely, who work with black operations to make sure that there are no native or natural or black or African or non-white governments around the world that can fend for themselves or feed for themselves or look after their own people, because they want everybody to take part in and be part and parcel of and with the system of white world supremacy. Capitalism. So that's Zimbabwe. Southern Africa, 10, 15, 20 years ago when Mandela was freed, I used to be one of those youths that went round with petitioning apartheid. We used to have petitions and sign. We have 5,000, 10,000 subscriptions, petition signatures from people in Great Britain to take to the Parliament to say to the British government, no longer trade with South Africa. Because South Africa, the apartheid government is wicked. And it's murder. I remember the slaying of Soweto, 1976. Where they're murdering the children, the police are murdering the kids. 26 or more children died on the morning. School children with rocks, reminiscent of Wagwan in Palestine. But you're not allowed to talk about what's going on around the world. There is no solidarity, there is no familiarity with any of us anymore. We've all lost the human faculty. But let me not miss the point or mess the point. South Africa, 10, 20 years ago, the whites were scared that the blacks would gain their freedom because of anti-apartheid movement and the sympathies from around the world, and that the blacks would then, with their freedom, go and slaughter the white people, go and slaughter the white minority, go and slaughter the Boers and the Afrikaners and the coloureds. But that's never been on the plate. That's never been part of the menu for the Africans. That's never been part of the discourse or the intellectual choice of the Africans. That's never been their choice. They wanted freedom, justice and equality. They wanted food, clothing and shelter, because 95% of the population are suffering in poverty. When you're suffering for poverty, when you're suffering to eat and to have clothes and to have shelter and to pay for Bombaras electricity and gas and other utilities, you're not thinking about killing white people. You're thinking about feeding your children. You're thinking about getting to work, having some work. You understand what I'm saying, blood? Mm-hmm. So now, because Mandela, anyway, I don't want to go too much into my views on South Africa, but I overstand the situation in Africa, understand the situation in Africa, understand Wagwan in Africa, and understand Wagwan, what's happening in South Africa. Because right now it's going to become again the focus of world attention about the policies and the politics of the Africans. We can touch on that a little bit later because I can feel the vibe and the need to speak on it. I beg you, if there's any question.
Oh, the next question was going to be, what do you think it's going to take for us as a human race to come together and see each other as one, or do you think it will ever happen?
Do I think that human beings will ever come together and see, see themselves as one?
As one unit.
All right. Yes, I do, but it's in layers and it's in levels. Picture this. You're in a billionaires club.
Uh-huh.
Now let's call it, first of all, the trillionaires club.
Uh-huh.
You're one of the few people or countries or clubs or elites in class in the world who's able to govern a trillionaire. You have many trillionaires in your club. When your trillionaires get together, they all feel as one.
Uh-huh.
They don't see colour or race or nation. They see humans, trillionaires. Okay, that's the trillionaires. Let's get to the billionaire club. When billionaires get together, they don't have a right-wing nationalistic billionaires club as opposed to the left-wing socialistic billionaires club. They're all billionaires. They see each other as humans. Yeah? Let's go to the millionaires club. In the millionaires club, I would say probably the same. Even though there are more millionaires than what there are today than what there were a few years ago, I would say because of the mass spread of millionaires, then you might start to see some form of social stratification within the millionaires club. When you get to the millionaires club, you might see some humans saying, "Oh, I'm not chilling with those because them blackies or them Pakis or them Chinese or them Afghanis don't know how to behave, so we're going to keep to our club." In the millionaires club, perhaps. I don't know. I'm not part of it, so I'm speculating. So let's go down to the middle class or the upper middle class. In the upper middle class, they don't really tend to, they might have their own intellectual views about different races and nations and people, but they tend to be far removed from those people. And should they meet any people in their circles, they usually tend to deal with each other on an individualistic basis. So if you treat them right and you behave correctly, you know the social decorums and the social forums and the social ways, then you tend to get away with it. But if you don't, then you won't. Middle classes. This is the battleground for civility. It's a battleground for civilization. It's a battleground for consciousness raising. Will the middle classes, will those who are in a position to help the poor do anything to help to further embrace the goal or the vision of a one human race? I'm not sure. I think that the majority of people who strive to be middle class are more concerned with material acquisition rather than helping those people at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And those who are at the millionaire, billionaire and trillionaire status, they're most certainly more concerned about their own material acquisition and situation rather than helping to equalize those at the bottom or within the so-called middle classes. There are owners and there are those who are controlled. There are puppets and there are masters. The ones with the money and the material, they're the so-called materialistic masters. Those without, they're the puppets. They're the sheep. They're the cattle. They're the goyim. They're the humans. That's who we are. Mm-hmm. We're part and parcel of that. Now, do you want to consider yourself to be a sheep or a fish or a niche or a twish or a cattle or a rattle? No, you want to be part of that materialistic elite. So that's how they've got us tricked. It's linked to the racial polemic. The racial dilemma is also linked to the materialistic dilemma. Do you want to be black? Do you want to be black? Do you want to be nigger? Do you want to be at the bottom of the social ladder? Or do you want to be at the top and be light and be bright and be white? Because at the top of the social ladder, by and large, generally, they tend to be lighter and brighter. If you go to any country in the face of the world, any country in Africa, Asia, anywhere. I've already mentioned Brazil, in South Africa, in India, it's the same. When you go to these places, you'll see that the lighter skinned people tend to be further at the top of the social ladder because of acceptability. You don't have the managers. I remember a few years ago, the Nigerian football team sacked the black manager because they didn't want to listen to a black manager. So I don't want to diverge too far away from the question, do I envisage a point when people start to see themselves as human as opposed to being racial? Yeah, I can see that happening. But it will take a fire sale, it would take an apocalyptic extremity, it would take an emergency in order to make that happen. I don't believe in aliens, but if aliens came from the sky, then perhaps human beings would look at themselves as being human beings. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe in aliens. The only aliens I believe in are those so-called human beings that don't believe in human beings, that don't behave like human beings, that don't help to serve and save the human planet, the earth, like a human being would and should. Because the earth was given, the dominion of the planet earth was given to man by the creator or by the creators, by the God. And what's man doing with it? Destroying it, despoiling it, deforestation, mass consumption, mass pollution, mass confusion.
All three
so when
were
people
wearing
start
what appeared to be explosive vests.
Peace and blessings to each and every single body.